All right, welcome everyone. We're doing an abbreviated This Week in Crypto. Our normal live streaming team isn't fully here for the holidays, so expect videos like this for the remainder of December, and then we'll be back at it in January. But we're here with our founder, Maksim. Maksim, how is everything?
Doing good after the carnage, and we're now in recovery mode. But
Yeah,
even the carnage, it came after a long year of growing, so it's okay.
exactly.
Take what you
We're
have.
coming off of an amazing year in crypto, and if you've been on the ride for the majority of the year, you've done pretty well. But recently over the past week, there's been some blood in the streets, and
Mhm.
Maxim, you have some charts here revolving around Chainlink and Uniswap and some altcoins that you've been watching right
Yes,
now.
yeah. The reason we are bringing it up uh, as sometimes to see the incoming top, you can see it through the lens of top altcoins or some of the top altcoins. And of course, after now the market crashed, you can ask yourself a question: how can I do it better next time? And we know from our experience there are very advanced, complicated approach, but there are relatively simple one and still based on the data, based on the metrics. We call it divergences, and divergences they mean the following. So the price, in this case, we take let's take 3 months. Yeah, it will be more obvious. So you take the price of asset, in this case shilling, and we'll check some others, and then you compare when the price is increasing, going up, are the metrics following through? Are they still increasing, or they start diverging? Means price goes up, but the matrix already kind of declining. And this is what we saw. This is what we saw, and some of them I see now in hindsight. Some of them I saw actually around the time when it happened. And so, in the case of Chainlink, it was quite a good background with a lot of news and good updates. Brian, I think you also wrote about it, a lot of development and protocol level. You can see in the social data a lot of mentions, quite okay dominance, almost 1%. Actually, it's quite substantial. Now, all this news, it's a one thing, divergence. We start seeing that very heavy one. So somewhere here, when price spiked, metrics followed, trading volume followed, transaction volume. So let's say amount of wallet transaction on chain followed, increased, new addresses increased, everything was good. But then after some correction, if you remember, wacky week ago around, we make a new high, and this is where it became troubled. On this higher price, it's obviously higher high. Green line is the price here. Metrics like transaction volumes, it's not even close to it, like kind of half on-chain volumes, or active addresses more than the half, but still you can see divergence here. You compare this part and this part. A new network growth also like this metric. It's amount of edit addresses for this, or amount of new addresses who holds this token for the first time. Yeah, and it keep like this. So even we're trying to go to new high, didn't make it, but still keep declining. So this way it became really troublesome. And I saw it on Link and ENS as we hold it in our portfolio. And this was the same, as you can see, till pushed, I think, to 50. And all these metrics like volume, like diverged heavily. Also new addresses or active addresses diverge, everything goes down, and this is not what you want to see. I think curve 2, even though curve we sold already before this dump. Tick, tick, tick. Yeah, I think curve. I sold it for other reasons. I think we were selling around here because I saw initial divergence, so we exited, and then I tried to high to build a new top and made even stronger divergence. Same story. Yeah, you see prices trying to grow, but metrics don't follow up. Cannot. Exhaustion. The trend exhaustion. Yeah, and here it's very obvious. Yeah. And you can set it up for yourself relatively easily, and keep track on it. It's a time-proven approach. Yeah, Some cautious, depends which asset you hold. For instance, we're discussing with Brian. For Uniswap, it did not show divergence. No, it's still going strong, now even stronger for different reasons. Yeah, you can see here network growth keep pumping, so increasing quite looks well. You could argue here with this double top metrics go down, but still not so obviously. Yeah. So therefore, if you check on the one asset, you might end up with someone which doesn't show divergence. Better to have 3 to 5. Yeah, I really recommend to have 3 to 5. And when you see for majority of them showing this pattern, attention, the red market is coming. Not you don't know exactly is it today, tomorrow, but it's coming. So it's one thing. And another thing, as we actually didn't check it long time, but today I decided to check. So it's in hindsight, but I know we used it in the past. It's a good thing. We call it dolphins and sharks behavior with stablecoins, and it's a very valuable analysis you can do. It shows you the following thing: when the price, you can do Bitcoin, Ethereum. This green line doesn't matter. In this case, Bitcoin, they're still quite closely correlated. If even sometimes Bitcoin outperforms. What we want to know how quite wealthy, not a small one, not super wealthy, which can be also like exchanges, liquidity pools, but obviously people who manage their portfolio and who has 10 to 100,000, 10 to 100,000 in stables USDC, USDT, or 100,000 to million, again USDC and USDT. How do they behave? Do they still keep accumulating their stables, like in this case, like kind of increasing? How do you call it? Powder, yeah, gunpowder,
Dry powder,
and
yeah.
ready to deploy. Yes, and then when they start deploying it massively, you will see it as decline. It's a percentage of total stablecoin supply from this wallets. When they start declining, it means they invest massively. They move it away. It's not in their wallets anymore. So they're doing something. They see opportunity market and they start deploying it. So when this process is active, you also can see it as an early warning sign. And when it goes for long enough time and you combine it with divergences, good, you might have it all. Good. This is a important addition, or for some, if you're long enough, maybe you saw it as using in the past. And it's important one, because if we would look as we did in the past weeks, only major metrics for Bitcoin, here not so much actually showed for the possible top. Okay, the one maybe you could argue, and I remember either you, Brian, or someone else from our team argued, well, look, the super small wallets keep increasing like crazy. Okay, maybe, but I said that time that what others are not. And for me, it's still a sign. Okay, not financial advice, but sign maybe not ultimate top, because smaller wallets still not following up. They're still kind of declining their holdings, which is not typical behavior. It might change. If it changes, I will change my stance too. Let's say if price now start recovering, they start massively buying. Okay, say okay, this is the top. But if we use just this, it's not so clear picture. I would not make a conclusion about top just based on this metrics. Sometimes it works, but this time this was not enough. Yeah, I don't know. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I like to combine all of the small wallets together, right? If you just look at one
Okay.
by itself, it can be misleading and kind of be
Mm.
a cherry-picked narrative. So when I'm analyzing like the small versus mid versus large, I just go like
Yeah.
0 to 0.1. What are they doing? What about 0.1 to 10? And then it's just 10 and up, whether it's an exchange address or not. Like, don't nitpick. If it's a 10 plus Bitcoin wallet, that's still a millionaire, right? Or close to it right now. It isn't now, but it was last week. So
Okay.
what I'm trying to do is just always get an idea of just the overall large picture, overall mid picture, overall small picture. And I like that you brought up the trend fading on the altcoins. It's pretty clear a lot of them were starting to decline in early December, even though our crypto market top happened on the 16th, 4 days before this recording. So I think you bring up some great points, and the dry powder too. It's so important to continuing a rally. And if the dry powder is going away,
Difficult.
those tops form pretty quickly. Yeah.
Not much time, not much money left to propel the market. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another things which, if I compare to the previous, and now I'm talking about positive sides. Yeah, you just saw small wallets behavior, and let's say this blue one is a network realized profit loss. It means on a network level, we are talking now about Bitcoin. Those coins which are being moved, as they moved in profit, it means last time they were noticed on this address, the price of Bitcoin went lower. Now when they move, it's higher, so we assume they're realizing profits. Or sometimes it also go into negative. So the kind of this addresses realizing losses. The idea behind this, we use Bitcoin as a store of value. So if I use it, well, if I go the way to move Bitcoins, it's either to buy or to sell them. It's not like some other coins, especially stablecoins in Ethereum, where you have many different use cases. Here it's not. And as long as we have this behavior, network is active, altcoins are moving, or big amount of coins are moving which are in a profit, and we see it in the blue lines and spikes, it's relatively safe. I mean, safe not in terms of lack of volatility. Volatility can be, but you can say, okay, there is enough worry or demand to sell the coins, and it's not typically ultimate top condition. Yeah. The ultimate top condition I can show you when it was 21. Yeah, so that's some, let's say, degrees time frame. Yeah, so you will start seeing like this. Yeah, it moves and then it stops moving, and there is no more, and they just kind of decrease, and even the price kind of declined and recover, and people barely move. Then it crashes. So one time move, and then again people not realizing profits. This is like a dangerous environment which you don't want to see. Okay, right. And as we are now, okay, let's decrease, not to confuse. It's also hide it, option hide. It's active, yeah. So there are enough people who don't believe it is sustainable. Yeah. Whatever the talks are, there are obviously enough people who say, okay, no. It's Sailor is a dangerous guy, or Trump. We don't know what will happen when Hitler comes. So they're realizing profits because there've been a lot of profits. Yeah, for some, at least, for quite some participants, and then realizing it. And this is what you want to see. If you see the lack of profit realization, then it's really, really, really dangerous. When it becomes, these blue lines become quiet. So as long as it's not super quiet, it's okay. I mean, in my opinion, with my risk tolerance, it's okay. I don't move yet my Bitcoins. So it's on the positive side. I don't know how about you, Brian, but
Yeah, I think this is a great way to look at Bitcoin. Just the overall amount of holders, making sure that's not surging is always a good thing.
Yes, exactly. Like this one, you mean, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. And then the age
Yes.
consumed and network realized profit loss. I know you're hiding age consumed right now, but we've seen
I
a
showed it
little.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, even though it's pretty small compared to that big spike, if you go, you can see quite a bit that was happening pretty much for the last month on this rise. So the realized profit, that makes sense considering we were approaching new all-time highs. But I'm watching the 10 plus holders. I'll take over the screen sharing just for a few minutes if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So on top of what you've been showing here, Maksim, I mean, here's just an overview of the last 7 days. You can see outside of a few assets like Hype and BGB, I mean, everything is basically in the red. And then in terms of just the overall 10 plus BTC wallets here, you can see my screen, right, Maksim?
Yes, I can.
Perfecto. So yeah, I'm just saying 10 plus BTC, it's going through the moon right now, even with this mild correction. Let me go ahead and refresh, actually, sorry. So there we go. It's still going up. In fact, the day that it dropped from 106 to 100, we actually saw a notable rise. This was, I mean, just zooming in here a little bit, this was one of the bigger rises we've seen over the past month. And I consider that still a good long-term sign. But as Maksim, you were showing, there's still some short-term pain that we need to go through due to just the overall uh, surge that we've seen over the past 2.5 months, going back to about October 10th.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in terms of altcoins, one of the big warning signs that I saw, so you should be able to see these okay, even though they're in yellow. This is specifically the top transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Any transaction that occurred that was in the top 10 largest for any network over the past 3 months is showing up
Okay.
here. And you can see just an overwhelming amount of yellow. And the yellow indicates top transactions that happened on December 16th specifically. And there's just a huge amount of these 20
So the
million.
different color, each color is for different day.
Exactly. Yeah, I made this model a couple of years ago
Wow.
with the idea of seeing, current day
Yeah.
transactions. That's what these big black bars are for. And then any
Okay.
previous day corresponds with a different color, and it all
Mm-hmm.
automates. It's great. It really gives an idea of where tops might form. And as I scroll to the right, you can see even more big yellow bars. The graph
Mm-hmm.
here, this was a $108 million transaction. And the reason the 16th is important is because everything was going up. That was the day we saw the last all-time high for Bitcoin, going above 108K for the
Let
first
me
time.
see.
So
Yeah.
it
Okay.
makes sense that there were tons and tons of big transactions on that day,
Mm-hmm.
because now we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at that day 4 years later and going, yeah, that was the local top, at least for now. And look at all these altcoins that were just firing off with huge profit takes going
Mm-hmm.
on.
Mm-hmm.
So even though Bitcoin itself didn't see any, massive notable top transactions that day,
Mm-hmm.
the surrounding altcoins, large caps and mid caps, they were seeing huge uh, levels of massive transactions that were showing some warning signs here.
Okay. Interesting. Somehow I forgot about this spreadsheet you have.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
did too, until one of the community members pinged me and was like, "Hey, have you checked
Mm-hmm.
out your top transactions model?" I'm like, "No." And so
He
I
says that
posted.
it's flashing a lot of alerts.
Yeah, I mean, especially on the 16th, you can see a few on the 17th with Lido DAO and um,
Mm-hmm.
Aave. But yeah, the 16th and 17th is pretty much where crypto markets have topped. And we see the results of all of these profit takes.
Mm-hmm.
So the powers
Okay.
that be, I guarantee a lot of these big holders in altcoins, they also hold a lot of Bitcoin, right? So if they're making these
Of
huge
course, everyone
profit
does.
takes,
Yeah.
yeah, of course they're doing the same thing with Bitcoin as well. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes altcoins can give hints at what's going to happen to Bitcoin too, even though altcoins
Yeah.
follow Bitcoin's lead overall.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. A few insights I just put out yesterday that I think are pretty
Mm-hmm.
applicable. So the MVRV, 30 days. The last time we saw 30-day MVRV this low was right at the start of that rally, October 10th,
Mm-hmm.
when the 30-day
Mm-hmm.
was at negative 3.9. And this gold
Mm-hmm.
line here shows everyone was basically in profit on average.
Mm-hmm.
We saw
Mm-hmm.
a very small dip here on December 10th, and then we bounced from that. And eventually, after this little retrace, we got
Mm-hmm.
down to about negative 2%, which is the lowest we've seen, believe it or not, since October 10th. So I find that to be a very good sign that we're finally back in negative territory. It's a little bit surprising considering we've gone up so much even in the last 30 days, but there have been
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people buying at the top up here over 100, 105K, 108K even. And so they've gotten a little bit punished after this retrace happened, and that's why the average trader that has been active with at least one transfer in the past 30 days, they're down 2% now. So that means that if you buy or add on to your position at this time, you're doing so with less risk than you would usually in Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Another thing that I'm watching is the amount of mentions of buying the dip. So specifically,
Right. Right. It's one of the
um,
classic.
I actually had a live look here.
Uh-huh.
So this is the past 3 months in 8-hour intervals. By the way, shout out to the Santiment
This is
team.
a new one. This is a new one.
What's that?
I mean, they added a new, yeah, exactly.
interval. Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
So
cool, cool.
this is
Okay.
huge. This makes it a lot easier to share
Yeah,
stories and
yeah, yeah,
narratives and make it clear without too much noise.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
chose 8 hour intervals. I think it's a pretty good
It's great, yeah.
in between. Make sure it's on
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin USD. And you can see this was the highest level of mentions of buy the dip
Mm-hmm.
going back in time all the way until August 4th when we had that huge dip. In terms of social dominance, we'd actually have to go all the way back to April, the last time we saw a spike this big.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And clearly, the narrative is very much on buying this dip because all people have been seeing since October is rise, rise, rise. So I'm a little bit concerned by that, considering how optimistic the crowd is.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
they
yeah,
got
yeah.
it right back in early August, but overall, the crowd typically gets a little bit punished
But
if
it
they're.
wasn't the final dip. I think we had a kind of a test of the dip. You see,
That's true.
exactly
Yeah.
when then this time they don't talk about anymore. It's quite classic setup.
Yeah, exactly. So
Mm.
oftentimes, as Maxim's saying, the bigger dip that or the dip that everyone is making mainstream and saying this is the dip to buy, they're usually
Mm.
wrong. And there's one more dip that people
Yeah,
are a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
quieter on, like we saw in September. And
Exactly. This is where the kind of fear comes in. If even price not necessarily making you low, it can just do a double bottom or yeah. But there are much less talks about buy the dip now. They're getting people, us including, you
mhm.
emotionally feel it kind of not so secure anymore. You will not run around on social media say, "Hey, I bought the dip." You say, "Oh, what if people think I'm stupid?" Yeah, you will keep quiet. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
what we see on this data.
exactly. And I
Mm-hmm.
also pulled up this chart that shows the
Uh
amount
huh.
of people mentioning buy, buying, or
Okay.
bought Bitcoin or BTC,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically 100K, because
Okay.
it's obviously a very polarizing number. So right now,
Still, yeah.
yeah, it's like the biggest psychological number we've ever seen in crypto.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
popular.
Yeah.
Look at all these people that were still saying that it's time to buy, and very few people saying it's time to sell. And now we're starting to get a little bit higher. Let me zoom in
Okay.
just the
Now it's more
last.
balanced. Like everything in universum should be.
Exactly. Exactly. For some reason, the interval isn't showing up. Let me refresh this.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, so this is just 4 hours. I'll make it one day and go back 1 month so we can see it a little bit better. So all these sell calls, which is quite surprising, like November 25th when we had that dip down to 90,
Mm-hmm.
91,
Mm-hmm.
lots of sells, not a lot of people wanting to buy. And then all of a sudden, we start to see a change right here on December 4th. We see a top. Then on December 9th, when we dip, there's almost as many sell calls as there are buy calls, and we blast off. And
Yeah.
then finally, we end up dipping after all of these buy calls are dominating the sells. So I find that very fascinating.
Yeah. By the way, do you know if? Yeah, I think we need to play around with this time frame. Is a daily aggregation of hours? I need to. It's a new one. I didn't play with it anymore. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of 4 hours looks more detailed. And do we have trending narratives for this week? Do you know if it is?
Yeah, so I have that pulled up here as well.
Uh-huh.
It
So
still
what do we
looks
have?
like AI is getting a big chunk of discussion.
No doubt. Yeah.
So that's a big topic that I believe is
Mhm.
driving markets, and that's more of a long-term, momentum,
And
I
this
think.
orange, which was big and then slowly around 18. Yeah, what is this?
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this
what
is
is
Pengu,
a
the
Pengu. Okay, okay, of course.
yeah,
Airdrop, the famous Pengu airdrop. Okay, interesting. It's quite cool. And the green one before was very big and then it became smaller. No,
this
left,
one.
left, left. No, no. It was on the
Oh, right here.
15 or
Meme
16.
coins?
Yeah, yeah. Aha.
Yeah.
Or 16. So
What do you
top came
know?
precisely with meme coins and then no one talks about it. Okay, quite cool.
Exactly. So this happened right
Mhm,
when Bitcoin's all-time high happened and everyone was trying to get euphoric about the most
mhm,
speculative, high leveraged assets out there,
mhm,
and their greed gets
mhm,
punished and then we go down. You can also see that the CPI happened that day.
Right.
So that,
No, that was a kind of trigger. Yeah,
exactly.
It's not a reason. It's just a trigger. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to summarize that, the CPI report was about as expected, slightly more inflation than usual, and then the FOMC came, and this was the same day. So the CPI actually happened, I forget, like the 13th, 14th, something like that, maybe even a few days earlier. But the reason the CPI was mentioned is because the FOMC meeting occurred and they dropped interest rates, which is usually good for markets, but it was already kind of baked in this situation. Everyone knew it was going to happen. And then, we see the 25 BPS drop, followed by Jerome Powell saying that there's only going to be about half the amount of interest rate cuts as planned for 2025. So even though the current FOMC plan was exactly as expected, they said for the future, you won't see as many bullish results as you were expecting for the US's policy. And of course, the US's policy for interest rates has a huge impact on the rest of the world and crypto as a result.
Yeah. True.
And then just a few on-chain metrics that I had for Bitcoin. We see transaction volume really happening around the 4th at its highest point. This is when we first got to 103, and then we ended up dropping on the 16th, of course. But you can see all the on-chain metrics, they seem to spike around the 4th. This is kind of normal, where we see an all-time high, tons of on-chain metrics are at their highest, and then we see maybe one more all-time high a week or two after, even though on-chain metrics are going down. Just like Maksim was showing at the beginning of the call with Link and Uniswap, Bitcoin was no different. It actually had its highest points back in the first week of December, and then around the 16th is where we saw the true all-time high top end up occurring. So I find that interesting as well. It was a classic bearish divergence where you see things going up a little
exhaustion.
more.
Like exhaustion,
Exactly. And then MVRV, like we said, still at about -2. It actually got as low as -5.3%, which is a pretty good sign. I just wouldn't be surprised if we go down a bit more until we start to see like a -10 or -15% MVRV. And then the crowd will get very worried. So that's something to look out for. Funding rates are fairly normal and flat right now. Nothing too worrisome there. Whale transactions, again, you can see at the beginning of December is where we saw the most. And then we ended up dropping or going a little higher despite whale transactions going down. We already talked about supply distribution. Mean dollar invested age, I still think is important for now. We've flattened a bit, but I still like the long-term trend here, moving down pretty rapidly as stagnant coins are getting moved. So this is kind of a case, Maksim, in my opinion, of like short-term, which looks a little bit scary, versus long-term, which I still think looks pretty good moving into 2025.
Yeah, doesn't look scary yet. It might change if suddenly whatever. We can discuss it next week. We'll see. Oh, next week. Is it already New Year? No, not yet. It's 27. Okay, we can discuss it. Yeah. Depends. Many things can change in the crypto in 1 week, or sometimes even in 2 days. So we'll see. It might get scary. I remember many New Years in crypto market. It's just liquidity typically, or at least in the past, was very dry. So volatility is sometimes insane. We'll see. Now we have probably more players, but again, these players also take or big institutions like hedge funds. I mean, speculative institutions. They probably also take time off, or maybe not. Maybe they see, oh, cool chance. Now others are going off, so I can now ride the market both directions, up and down. So I still think we'll see probably more volatility.
Yeah,
I mean,
I see that.
This looks good. Wow, my goodness. But it's a long term. I mean, it's more like confirmation. I don't use it as leading, but good to see it declining so nicely. You see what you share on the screen for anyone reading this chart. 21st of June 21, 21 June 21. Yeah, you see on the chart. Yeah, and when the price started, it still was declining and then start growing. So whatever happens, people just started to accumulate. This is where it looks scary. Whenever you see this setup, imagine now price a little bit more down, start increasing up, or make it even probably maybe even make a new high. It doesn't matter. But you see that dollar situation is climbing up. It means accumulation started. So people really in strong belief. This looks bad.
Mm-hmm.
Not yet the case.
Yeah.
And we try to make our decisions based on data we see.
Yeah. Long story short, you want this mean dollar invested age line, especially for Bitcoin moving down. But whatever asset you're looking at, Chainlink, XRP, whatever, if you're seeing the price going up, as Maksim said, this works as kind of a validation that the price move is legitimate. If the mean dollar invested age is moving down, that means the coins are getting younger on average, and they're moving healthily and cycling through the network.
There are new hodlers and those who buy on these prices, so it's generally good. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we did a good little condensed
small
explanation of what's going on in the markets. My thesis right now is it might be a little tumultuous between now and the end of the year. I've mentioned this on previous videos. This is a huge tax year for a lot of people too. I mean, institutionals, everyone's made a lot of money this year through stocks, gold, crypto. So they're going to be taking a little bit of profit out just for tax purposes. Even if the fundamentals in crypto still look good long term, this is historically one of those years where we've seen Decembers, the ends of years, be a little bit dicey. 2017, I remember when we first got to like 18K, big drop in December. 2021, same thing. The all-time high hit November 10th or something, and then it started to flat and then dropped a lot in December. So, look at history in this situation and understand that the time of year does sometimes have a little bit of an impact, and we'll see in early 2025 whether things start to become a little more smooth once again.
True.
But thanks for joining, Maksim. I think this was productive, and I appreciate all of the insights, as I know the community does.
No, thanks for running. It's always a pleasure to go with you together and reflect a little bit and compare, look from different angles.
Definitely,
appreciate
my friend. Well, thank you as always, everyone, for joining. I will talk to you next week, Maksim, and have a wonderful weekend.
Yep. Yes. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.